Your name. So, what happens? What's my penalty unto death if I actually reveal your name? Do I all of a sudden turn into an exploding cinder? Does one of the characters from your album come out and is like, I
Well,
am
you
death?
know what? I would say more will be revealed. You know, it's like I love. I have my theories. I'm an H.P. Lovecraft fan, and I'd like to think that perhaps a Cthulhian or an Azathoth-esque type sloppy, nasty creature would show
I,
up in your part or your house and take you out.
I'm warning you. I am personal friends with Blake from IWAS, so I'm coming.
Oh, okay, okay,
Right? He's giving me the good
yeah.
juju there. Are you familiar with IWAS
You
at
know,
all?
I'm not. I'm not.
Dude, you two are so musically adjacent, it's not funny.
Nice. Well, I will take a dive on that for sure.
Okay. So, like I was saying before we started, by the way, thanks for being on Clean and Sober Stoner. It's exciting. Usually, I do a little prep, I listen to the songs and your shit
It's
ain't like
not.
that. So, what the hell were you thinking? So here's and I'm going to write this in because I have to do a review now of the very easy to remember title, Upon Whom the Last Light Descends. Your music is kind of like, you're watching Alien, and it just goes right to the chest bursting scene without the foreplay. It's like we get this nice piano, kind of opethy, from My Arms Your Hearse, and then blah. So this is an entire concept. You're coming out the gate with a three-part, but kind of three-part, but it sounds like it's going to be more parts because you're pulling songs because they're
Right.
not up to snuff,
Right.
and you'll release them.
Right.
So okay, what in the hell possesses you people, right? There's a band from Great Britain called, ironically, Godless Sons. Same thing, right? Right out the gate, beautiful album. You've got to check it out. But it's this really involved concept album, first album. Why?
Right. It's a wonderful question. And so for me, I mean, I've been playing music, I bought my first guitar when I was 10 years old at a garage sale, a Silvertone acoustic, probably for like 50 cents. My dad's my biological father and my stepfather, both musicians. And I've been listening to writing and my own songs like from the gate. I mean, I'm not really a guy that was interested in being in a cover band or learning other people's songs. Maybe that's egotistical. I don't really know. I just know that I've always been writing my own music. And I remember when I first heard Rush, Permanent Waves, and then shortly after that was introduced to their first double live album, which was when they were touring for the 2112 album. That intersected with me hearing the rock opera, Jesus Christ Superstar. And that intersected with, of course, Pink Floyd. It's unavoidable. It happened. And then I also, just from the jump, it was Black Sabbath and Zeppelin. All of these things amalgamated at a very early point in my creative journey. And I fell in love with like these deeper narratives, and really what one of my favorite people, Joseph Campbell, refers to as the hero's journey. And of course that's played out in films like Star Wars, and then there's of course Lord of the Rings, and I digress. But that journey of the hero, basically, and that longer epic narrative just really grabbed me. And I've been in a lot of bands that wrote pretty traditional, 3.5 minute tunes, verse, chorus, solo, chorus out, whatever. There's value in that for sure. But I've been through a lot of tragedy in my life, and I'm lucky to be sitting here. And what happened is in the middle of the lockdown, I had what I would refer to as a spiritual experience. It was like a half fugue state. I had my computer up. I just had GarageBand going, and I had my guitar going to just some random drum loop that I pulled up at a particular tempo and time signature. And what came out of that is the third track from Upon Whom the Last Light Descends, It Sleeps. And that all happened in one fell swoop. I did not edit it at all. I immediately sent it off to the drummer I currently work with, who is like one of the, to me, top 5 drummers in sort of this otherworldly hard rock, heavy rock world, Kelly Scott from the band Failure. And I was terrified to send it to him. I really was. I met him through a mutual friend. We got on the phone, and I'm a fanboy, of course, too, so it was kind of weird. And I tried explaining to him what happened and what I wanted to do, and he just interrupted me, and he's like, I know how this works. He was just send it to me.
Okay.
He didn't want to hear all the fanfare. I don't blame him. I sent it to him, and then that began this process. And then so what ended up happening is it was just unavoidable. Like, I came to understand and sort of respect, not to get too esoteric, but I kind of refer to it as the muse, and this essence that exists outside of time and space that can step into that sort of twilight space when I'm kind of half in and half out and fully surrendered to that process. And these things just happen. Every single song on Upon Whom the Last Light Descends happened exactly the way that It Sleeps did. Now, clearly, after I got Kelly's drums, I did do some editing and retracking the guitars and tracking the bass and doing the synth and the soundscapes and working with my co-producer Mike Tholen out in Oceanside, California, so on and so forth. But the bulk of this was an accident, man. I mean, like, literally, like, really, an accident. I still don't understand it. It baffles me. It's such an adventure.
Good. Because I'm beyond confused.
Me too.
So like I said, it's like we jump straight to the chess scene, which nobody in their right mind is going to stay for that movie. And yet, today was Beware of God's Day, where, I started out and I'm listening to your EP and I have my notes, my little things like, how do you start out so brutal with that bass? And then you give us a Paul McCartney-esque melody line that is in complete opposition to what you're doing. And then I'm like, okay, well, then you send me the thing. So we have a mystery we can't solve. How in the heck did I get For Whom the Last Light Descends on August 22nd when it clearly wasn't released until August 26th?
It's a good question. I mean, what I think may have happened, I really honestly don't know. I mean, the thing is, obviously, like I said, I mean, this has been such a beautiful, to call it an accident obviously isn't even correct, but it's just, this has been a result of like me fully surrendering to an aspect of my creativity that I'd never done before. And in part of that too, I really naturally, without even trying, have intersected with a lot of awesome promoters and people like in this sort of world.
Okay.
So something happened there for sure.
Yeah. Somehow it probably ended up with Purple Sage.
Yeah.
Because so last year, Purple Sage started sending me PR stuff back in July last year. Well, I didn't write a damn thing. I have no idea. It's all in my junk mail. And so at some point in August, I take a look because I'm talking to Newbie Doomer, and I'm like, I think it's time to let this go. I wanted it to be, the original term, the original name of my site was Recovering from My Recovery.
Ooh.
And the idea that 12-step can be such a blessing and a curse. It's like, yeah, 12-step is wonderful, but you can end up in situations, in groups within Narcotics Anonymous that are beyond toxic. We're in like felonious shit going on. And I didn't get caught up in it, but I kept getting assaulted by it. So I was going to let go of it. And then I see, this thing from Purple Sage. It's like, oh my gosh, so I wrote something on Abrams. It was going to fold, man.
Wow.
It was going to fold. So that has to be when I got it. I got the code and I went, ooh, look at this. And I know I listened to it, but back then, because I have not a hero story, but I have an arc. if I hear anything that sounded remotely blackened or black metal, I went, no, because everything black metal comes from Burzum. It comes from white nationalist, fascist, bullshit. So I immediately, which I know it's not true now. So listening it today was like cathartic. I listened to it on my TV speakers, on my headphones, just every which way that I could. And it's a masterpiece.
Thank you. And real quick, just to, and I'll be brief here, but I've also been completely blown away by the response to this thing. Now, and I'm not hiding anything. This is essentially a one-man project right now. I've been a part of the Chicago music scene for years. I have people at the ready to go when I'm ready to take this thing live or do whatever, and I've got some ideas and concepts that I'm kind of working through. But for this to have occurred for me, like coming out of the other side of an F5 tornado that essentially was my life, and being in this wonderful new apartment in this great neighborhood in Chicago, Illinois, but yet in the middle of this lockdown, and have this happen as naturally as it did, as surprisingly as it did, to then all of a sudden through a friend of a friend, or intersect with like one of my top 5 drummers of all times, Kelly Scott. And then, and let me be, this is the truth of the matter. I saw Failure at Lollapalooza years ago on the side stage and leaned over to my friend and said to him, I'm going to work with that guy someday. I had no idea why I said it, but I believed it, and it was true as anything could be. So here we are all these years later. That thing happens. I put out part 1, and the first day I'm getting featured on Death Rattle podcast, a couple of other online music stations. I'm getting put on playlists. The Bandcamp thing just exploded. I mean, I've got people from literally all over the world that have been buying the album consistently. I mean, I got someone from Mali, from Timbuktu, Mali. I mean, I remember the Bob Seger song, something about Timbuktu. I didn't know that was a real place. Someone in Timbuktu, Mali bought the album. That's amazing.
So the album still has legs.
Oh yeah.
Because I just put up an Instagram with my obligatory typo at the end, but I had the opposite view coming in. Not nearly enough people are listening.
I'd agree with that. I'll agree with that.
Not nearly enough. But I think, and like I said, no holds barred. I think you have a few things working against you on 100%. This one. Like, where's the lyric sheet?
Right. Fair question.
Dude.
Oh, totally fair question. So I do have an answer to that. Well, the real honest answer is overthinking it, for sure. There are artists that have specific reasons why they don't, right? Put up the lyrics. And then there's those that have reasons that they do, and some people it just doesn't really matter, and they have a team of people that tell them what to do. I overthought it. The lyrics absolutely have to be put up, and so that will be corrected soon. Yeah.
I didn't expect you to be so pliable. I thought
but I will say this though: if you purchase the digital version of the album off of Bandcamp, the lyrics are embedded in the file with pictures. There's actually, it comes with photos that have the lyrics.
Okay, so I probably, because I'm such a newbie, I got the EPK, the electronic press kit, downloaded it, and then deleted it. Okay, so it does exist.
Yeah, but they need to be published though on all of the platforms like Spotify and Apple and stuff for sure.
Well, why don't you walk us through? So clearly you have a point A to point Z squared, figured out. So from the opening, and it is a beautiful opening, by the way. God, there's so many questions. I don't even know where to start. Yeah, let me get it from you first. What the hell's going on here? And set the stage for us.
I mean, specifically in the first piece or the.
Oh yeah, if we had to go song by song, and I keep you here till midnight.
So again, and I'm not going to continue to keep like re-referencing this point about kind of being in a half to almost completely fugue state. Obviously, not literally. I'm using that as a metaphor, but I mean that's what it felt like. Um,
Well, I think it because of what I do for a living. Why don't you explain to
yeah,
people what you mean by a fugue state and give us an idea of the mindset you're in? Because you're not the only one.
sure,
I mean, there's all sorts. There's going to be some dude in a bedroom in Timbuktu,
yeah,
who one of the dozen people who
sure.
watch this. My favorite joke, and so they're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm not crazy. I just need to write an interstellar cosmic rock opera that would make
Yes.
Yob
There you
cry."
go, man. No, yeah. By the way, love Yob. Don't get me started on that.
Oh, I hear it.
I mean,
hear it.
there's so much light in that heaviness. I love the juxtaposition of that. So,
Right.
at any rate, um, well, I mean, I don't mean to use like, fugue it's a pretty powerful word, and I don't intend to use it loosely, but I guess it's just the way that an easy way for me to describe this idea of being like half tethered to the ground and half like legitimately out of my brain, and again,
Right.
without getting all too weird about it, I've been
Oh, get weird, brother.
I mean, I've been, I have no problem being transparent about my recovery. In fact, today I'm 5 years and 5 months sober. So that's kind of an interesting irony, we could say, or cool serendipitous thing about this. But so it's just kind of like when you start to commit your life to relying on anything other than your own brain to just kind of deal with life. For me, the process of this has really, you would think it would have made me more grounded. But it's not what has happened. What has happened?
It's not what happens. Can you repeat that? Seriously, repeat that.
So you would think that if you are, moving through a process of, we call it turning your will and life over to the care of something. I don't want to. The idea that anything other than this thing between your ears to solve your problem, to solve your problems, to
Right.
deal with life, you might think that, oh, well, that sounds like a very grounding effort. Like that sounds like something that would maybe make you, but I mean, all these words get used so loosely, but it would make you more sane, if we're thinking of the Hallmark card definition of sane. What it did for me is it gave me this ability to accept the fact that I've never been fully tethered to the ground, and I may never be. And that's absolutely okay. It's kind of this idea where something that's seemingly a defect has been now turned into an asset. As it relates to my creativity, what happened was, I mean, we were all on lockdown, and this thing came to me, and it was like, what am I doing? Where is this going? And I had to let that go. I had to immediately let go with my brain stepping in, or my ego going, what are we doing? Where is this going? That had to be gone. So I immediately just made the decision, let's go. And I hit record. I pulled up a random drum loop with a random tempo and time signature. And I was experimenting with some lower tunings and such. And then this thing happened. And then once that happened, I got really scared. I got really uncomfortable. I started thinking, I don't even remember what I did. How the hell am I going to repeat this? The day will probably come when I'm going to want to get a band and play out live and blah, blah, blah. I mean, dude, this thing just started doing what it does, future casting. And I immediately just was like, no, you got to turn that over. You got to stop. Just let this happen. And so I let it happen. And, the first track, Invitation, like that stuff, that's me just hooking the mini lab, up to the computer and pulling up the software and just going it for it. And then all of a sudden this pattern reveals itself, and then this melody reveals itself, and it just happened. I mean, that's how this whole thing occurred. And I've been playing music, like obviously I told you, I've been playing guitar for a very long time. I've been singing and performing for a really long time. So obviously having that background and that experience, I've had label deals and lost label deals. I've been in tons of bands. All of that experience, I believe, absolutely shows up when it's needed and intersects with this concept of this other power, this muse, this shape-shifting source of just incredible energy that comes through and just boom. And it's like, what the hell just happened? And no wonder it's scary. Because I've never worked like that really before. Not fully. Not fully. Especially when there's other members involved. And God bless the other members. But it doesn't typically go that way. There's always some, like, but as soon as you start crafting something with some other dudes, at least in my experience, guys or gals, you're already from the jump having to kind of negotiate like your vision or your mission, or the drummer's got an idea of where to go here and you've got an idea of where to go here. And it's beautiful when you can meet in the middle and allow that sort of conflict to create, and we know that it happens all the time. But this, being in this position where there was no option to work with anyone else, there was only going around the corner to the grocery store. We were, Chicago in this neighborhood, we were on double lockdown. And I'm not going to get into that about our mayor, but we were on double, triple lockdown. There was nothing to do and nowhere to go. And so I surrendered to it. And it birthed this project that I now am like completely committed to.
Yeah, so, and I'm going to be all over the place too. My question, and I'm going to go real geek, you have extremely effective feedback throughout the first album. If you're recording basically straight into the laptop, how are you getting that organic? You're holding,
Sure.
know, whatever guitar of choice, like right in front of a 100-watt.
Oh no, you're nailed. Yeah, because they're. I did so. So I demo the guitars here. I demo them. I send those off to Kelly. Kelly lays down the drums, and then I take his drums into an external, traditional recording studio. I personally need to do that. I love that. I want the lights. I want the knobs. I want the people in the room, like the warmth. You feel the electricity and the energy. I took that to a very traditional recording studio, and then I retracked the guitars with a Fender Pro Sonic. Again, I started over analyzing it. I'm like, maybe I need an orange, or maybe I need one of those green amps that Sleep uses, and and that all has value and stuff. But and I'm being real transparent with this. I'm not part of any. I'm not like I don't come from this. I grew up in the same area that Lori from Acid King grew up. Like I know that whole trip.
I knew that was going to come up. So you've been to Bussy Woods?
More than been to Bussy Woods. I mean, she was ahead of the curve with it. I came in a little bit later, but I mean, I got whiplash to Metallica's Ride the Lightning in Bussy Woods, man. Like no shit, like really. But my point is, my roots are in metal, period. Not post-metal, not pre-this, I get it for marketing, and there's all the subgenres. I'm a metalhead, I come from metal, but I've also branched off into a lot of different areas of music, and to come back around full circle to this, but like this heavy, this epic, this dark, I mean, like, this may be a first for me as an artist, and so I don't claim to be part of some kind of tradition of like anything. This is what's happening, and so like I just surrendered all that bullshit too. Like I don't need to use an orange amp. I mean, they're great, obviously, but we used the Fender Pro Sonic in the studio, and oh my god, I couldn't believe this thing. I mean, like I would just slightly bend like an F sharp, which I mean I tuned to like standard C and then lower than that, but you can imagine, like, I'm not kidding you. It was just like I just like barely even touching it. It growled, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Well, yep. So that's what we went with, and that's what you're hearing is that amp, and then a Schecter Apocalypse is the guitar predominantly the guitar used.
Nice
Fender P
choice.
bass. You gotta go with the Fender P bass. I play bass on it too.
Okay, you lost me there. So I would do Fender jokes, but I'll derail it. Now I'll probably edit that out. Okay, but your bass tone is flat out amazing. Did you go through a bass amp, or was that modeled?
So that's a good question. I would have to ask the great engineer, by the way, Thomas Teddy Thornhill of a band Fuzz Bucket. He's moving on to become a fireman. He's moving to Baltimore. I'm going to dearly miss him because we've had a great partnership.
Oh, flip. A fireman in Baltimore?
Yeah, he grew
Oh,
he grew
man.
up there. He's following in his father's footsteps.
Oh,
He
okay.
he really truly, like, when I refer to this guy as a mad genius, I really don't think that's like over exaggerating. He graduated from Columbia College here in Chicago and interned with the gentleman that I currently work with, who's my co-producer and mixer, and to work with this guy, this young guy, Thomas Teddy Thornhill. We just call him Teddy. He just always knew what I needed and what I wanted without me really having to say anything. So as it relates to the bass, I don't really recall. I think it could have possibly been if Saldano has any kind of a bass head. I don't really recall. But to answer your question in terms of the tone and what you ultimately hear, all of that credit goes to Mike Tholen. Mike Tholen has worked with Ministry, a whole slew of people. Ministry, Buddy Guy. He was a sound designer on the set of the TV series Sense8, which was done by the Wachowskis, who did the Matrix films.
Oh, I'm definitely familiar
So
with
that's what you,
Sense8. In fact,
yeah.
I have not watched the last season because I don't want it to end.
Right.
So as long
Yeah,
as
there
I
you
don't
go.
watch it,
I like it.
it's
I like the way
still
you
there.
think. He's got this background in film and TV, and then the fact that he worked with Ministry on a few of their albums. He's worked with Chris Connolly, who was part of that whole industrial music scene back in the day here in Chicago. So he's a master, and I've known him for years, and we got intersected by accident as well, another beautiful accident. But he is the guy that I send him the raw tracks out of the studio, and he is the one that he just makes it magical.
So back to another Laureate
Yeah.
reference, because from what I'm hearing, and please correct me
Sure.
if I'm wrong. So you put together the bones, the skeleton of this thing, the muscles, the circulatory, but then you had enough letting go-ness to let somebody else put the skin on it. So as far as the end product of the effects, the absolutely devastatingly wicked bass. Being a bass player myself, I'm like, Jesus, that is just nasty.
Yeah, that's Mike Tholen.
So you let them.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I basically, like, this is as simple as it'll go for a guy like me. Like I'll tell Mike, and we are in a complete flow now with this whole thing. But we've worked together on other projects, and so we really had a lot of long conversations about what I was wanting to accomplish here. And so as it relates to bass, my biggest thing was, initially I wasn't really looking for fuzzed out bass necessarily. I was really coming more from, more of like that, almost kind of like the post-hardcore bands out of New York, like Quicksand or Helmet or Prong, like definitely a clean bass, but like really, but like slightly above the mix, and you could hear it. I play with a pick, blah blah blah, all that. And Mike is the guy that when I say things to him, he'll either say that sounds great, let's do it, or I'll hear dead silence. And when I hear dead silence, I know that he's about to tell me no. And so when I said all that, I had dead silence, and he came back with, well, no, I don't think so. He said, just wait. Just let me do it.
Just wait.
Yeah. And so
Now,
yeah.
Did you just make an apology for using a pick?
Not really. I sort of, I kind of was a little arrogant about it. It was an arrogant apology. It was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I kind of, wow, you're good. You can sense like these little, yeah, man, they loom. They loom. The little insecurities.
Well, there's a reason. If I can tell you a little bit about my night last night. It was a Sunday night. You know, my boys, they're one of my first reviews. And I felt like they locked themselves in a cave and listened to every heavy album ever made and went, I could be heavier than that. And then they did. So I finally saw them because we lived like 10 minutes away. Mind blown. And I saw a bass clinic put on by Ryan Sweeney. And then so they're the opening act. The second act was Red Mesa.
I caught a clip with their bass player.
Doomfest.
That guy. Woo! Woo!
Oh, Jesus. So now we have a whole different style, right? Ryan Sweeney blows me away. He blows me away. And then the band Lie Heavy comes on, and the dude's playing this absolutely to die for Thunderbird bass. And he's playing pick. And his pick playing is Chris Squire level pick playing. I'm watching him, and I'll apologize to all the guitar players and the drummers because they're doing their solos and stuff, and I'm just watching the bass players. I stopped recording because those guys, all three of them, masterful. All three of them completely different. And I kept thinking to myself that this guy is laying the playing with the pick thing to rest. Like if that is a thing in bass culture, that debate is
it is over
because that guy.
You're right. It is ultimately over.
But there was more to it because he's playing some parts. He's playing at the bridge pickup. At other parts, he's playing up on the neck. He's changing tone effortlessly. No pedal. It's just pressure where he's playing on the bass.
That's the shit. Oh, yes.
Yeah, see, I got you on that one.
Well, and real quick, because you made me think of something. You know, and there, you know, it's all that stuff too. Like I just, you know, I've been doing this a long time, man. And it's like I just have to and I have to do it every day because it creeps up. But it's like I just got to let all that kind of stuff go. It's like, you know, play with a pick, not play with a pick, put up lyrics, don't put up. I mean, all these things are clearly important, but there's just a lot of this like inner dialogue that can have me overthinking and paralysis by analysis, you know, that thing. And so what I want to say is this. I love while I'm not really a fan of, trigger warning to any Foo Fighters fans, I don't like them at all. I don't like their music. But I love Dave Grohl. And Dave Grohl, because I really love what he did with Queens of the Stone Age specifically. That is some of the best rock drumming ever recorded. I will plant my flag on my side of the debate all day long. I will fight for that. But what I'm trying to say is, Dave Grohl, when I heard him talk about this idea of working with what you have, I saw him give an interview where he was just adamantly like hammering the point home. Don't wait until all your ducks are in a row. It doesn't need to be like, you know, well, I've got a drummer and a bass player, but I don't have a this, or we've got this together, but we don't have the right studio, or we've got the software to record, but we don't have I mean, that can go around and around and around. Jack White's another one that I saw talk about this idea of letting go of what it is that you perceive as a challenge based on some narrative that you have bought into about what you need to have to move forward, to be creative. Fuck that shit. All of that out the window. Work with what you have. That's what I did. I'm in my apartment in the middle of a lockdown with some garage band. My ego wanted to mess with me about that too. It was like, I don't know if you should be demoing with GarageBand. You should get Logic or blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter, man. Just work with what you have. Just let it happen. And when you just let it happen, these other opportunities to move forward and for this process to evolve, they really start to just happen naturally.
So the intersections, back to Acid King, is that album Beyond Vision is recorded with a garage band. And she was going to re-record it, and why? It was perfect.
Exactly.
So I love what you're saying, and I really want to lean a little heavier into this. You brought up earlier about you didn't have the orange amp. And I can be a bit of an asshole, especially to my 6 little baby string brethren. The truth is, Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi doesn't use a fuzz pedal, and all of his tone is out of a Laney amp. He doesn't have a Mad amp. He doesn't have orange. It's a 1970s vintage Laney amp. That's it. Geezer Butler, Ashdown, for the most part. They do experiment. But the masters, the people that we aspire to, we get metal love. We love equipment, right? But we get fixated, and I still can't wrap my head around, though, the amp that you used. You said it was a Fender.
So it's a
what?
Fender Pro Sonic, which is typically that was an amp that came out kind of in the maybe more to late 90s, and I had done a deep dive on it, but my memory is not serving me well. But the individual that designed that amp actually went on to had worked prior with a really other reputable, well-known amp company. He was not with Fender for very long, and he designed this Fender Pro Sonic. They did not make a lot of them. It is a combo amp. It is two standard speakers in there, and it's a tube. But the guy, though, at the studio that I tracked at, he cut that down to a head. And so, of course, when I first saw it, I thought that was a head, but it's not really. I mean, they turned it into one, but the Fender Pro Sonic, you can find them. You can find them, but they're not available as a head. It's a combo amp. They're fucking monstrous.
Dude, this is absolutely awesome. Thank you. Moving back to your music.
Yes.
Briefly. So, you take us on this hellscape journey, and then we end up with the EP that literally I thought that's what we were going to be talking about.
Well, that's fine. Yeah.
And it's tonally it's different. So is that the arc of the character? You've moved into a second chapter. Tell us actually, I don't think we answered the first question. What the hell's this thing about?
Upon whom the last light descends?
What's this whole thing about?
Sure. Well, I'm actually perfectly okay to report that it's not necessarily about anything that hasn't been told 100 bazillion times before. It is ultimately the hero's journey. But this is really kind of cool. This is neat. So and let me clarify this too. And all bets are off in 2023, man. 99% of what everyone worries about is overrated, in my opinion. I'm just here to live and be creative. I am well aware of the fact that a lot of what I'm about to say sounds very pretentious and highbrow, and too bad. Too bad, because it's fun.
This is clean and sober stoner,
it's
baby.
Fun.
This is all about highbrow.
It's fun.
That's right.
So here we go. So the project's called Beware of Gods, but that's not where it started. So what happened is shortly after It Sleeps descended upon my psyche, as I like to say, the phrase I Nomad descended. And I Nomad. Well, and I'm like, oh, well, I get it. I as in either I or the greater I, and then nomad. We all know what a nomad is. I mean, the nomad trope's been used to death in the doom genre, which is totally fine. It totally works. I mean, that Sleep album cover is friggin' one of the best ever.
Dope Smoker.
Oh my God. I mean, nomads are great. But so that happened. And I thought maybe that might be the name of the project, I Nomad. As in moving forward, getting the band together. The band's called I Nomad. And then this is how my brain thinks when I'm overly caffeinated and in the middle of a lockdown. I start to figure out, well, what does this really, really mean? Well, I already explained that. NOM is gnome, is French for name, and then AD after death. I am named after death, which is the subtitle of the first track, Invitation, which the idea is after death, meaning the death of the old self that clearly is not working for us anymore. So we could argue a little bit of a recovery theme in there, but I don't feel like I did that on purpose. But that's just sort of what came out. Joseph Campbell, one of the stages in the hero's journey is the invitation. Now, I found that out afterwards. So that was a happy accident but the idea of the invitation, though, was the invitation to descend, to ultimately ascend. That it is unavoidable to walk through the dark part of the forest. It is just, it's either going to happen for you or it's not. And it's not pleasant. It is extremely terrifying and scary and uncomfortable, to, as many of us know in our community, to cross the threshold. But it's essential, and it's not to be missed. I don't want to get choked up, but it's not to be missed. And so I had that experience, and so that kind of started coming through. And I Nomad became then the character, the protagonist, if you will, for this story, which ultimately is upon whom the last light descends hath known hell and called it heaven. And it's the idea that you're living in hell, but you don't even know it. Your hell is your heaven because that's your comfort zone. You don't know anything other than what it is to live in hell. So for you, hell is heaven. And it's the journey of the I Nomad to understand finally that this big thing, this monster, which is kind of loosely inspired, I guess, in my own mind by Azathoth from H.P. Lovecraft. Azathoth is the blind idiot god, asleep. He's really H.P. Lovecraft's version of Brahma. He's infinitely dreaming, and he's asleep, and he doesn't have any idea that he even exists, but he's covered with all these really gross, flatulent, sphincter-like holes all over his enormously infinite body, and every so often he farts out a Cthulhu or a Yog-Sothoth or whatever. And the idea being, though, that this thing that's treading our protagonist, I Nomad, that there is no separation. He ultimately is going to come to understand that the monster is him and he is the monster. And so by the end of this journey, not to give too much away, but he will turn to face it toward reconciliation.
Okay. So at what point, as I mentioned, the second EP, where really it's close enough to 35 minutes.
Yeah. And I can clarify, that's a whole sidecar that has nothing to do with the concept at all.
I was trying to figure out how this
It doesn't fit.
You're an evil genius.
Listen, and I need to get this out because this is going to kind of really wing your brain around a little bit more. I don't really broadcast it that much, but if people dig deep enough or they kind of pay enough attention, they'll notice, for example, on my Instagram page that there's a link to a project called Sunrise at the Rail Yard. Sunrise at the Rail Yard is the name of a painting that was done by the late, great Charlie Whittle, who is a very well-known painter here in Chicago, whom I had intersected with in our community and was a mentor and a wonderful friend to me. And the first project that I did since getting sober happened around 2019. I got flown out to work with Bjorn Thorsrud, who had worked with everyone from Smashing Pumpkins to Whitesnake to, I don't remember, who was that guy? Some other really famous guy. It doesn't really matter. The point is, it was a great opportunity that was a spark for me to start really playing music again. So I put out a project that is the polar opposite of what I'm doing right now. It's much more, it's sort of almost like this amalgam of Americana, kind of Wilco-esque, Son Volti, kind of like roots, folky rock, but like intersecting with soundscapes and weird shit, because that's what my guy Mike does. I did that, and there's 4 songs on that album that I always knew really should have been heavier, that could have been done in more of a Doom-esque, slower, this put some molasses on it, dip it in some sludge. Those are the 4 songs that are on Post-Apocalyptic Doomed Love Affair. Those 4 songs are a redo of 4 tracks from a previous project. Hence why it's called the Beware of Sunrise Redux. See, we could do this. It doesn't matter. Be confused. It's great. I don't care.
Talk about letting go.
Hey, man.
So, one, I love like I said, the EP has a totally different tone to it. And so I noticed you smirked when I said, after this ripping, just bass thing, all of a sudden there's like McCartney-esque, almost George Harrison-y type melody. And I'm like, I love
those are real songs. Like, those are songs that were written originally on an acoustic guitar. Now, I love that you caught that, though, because that whole experience was so valuable to me, because I'm so steeped in like this world now with the detuned, the Chapter Apocalypse, and I love it. But going back and revisiting those songs that were at their root written on acoustic guitar, and then hearing how well they translated, brought me back to what any songwriter, with half a brain in their head knows, is that when you have a good song, like a well-crafted, good is subjective, but like a really, truly, like a well-crafted song,
I know
you can produce it in a myriad of ways. And so this kind of took me back to that, but it also took me back to, wow, like Pharmacy Flowers and the Gray Landscape are absolutely amazing in this production. I brought Kelly in, and he played drums on the Gray, and then my buddy Teddy played drums on Pharmacy Flowers. And I kind of couldn't get over, like, wow, this is really, really good. But then it dawned on me, well, because these are really just organically, really well-crafted songs. So it's just really great for me, because I'm not trying to put myself into a box. I've got the half fugue, Muse comes in, that experience, that whole thing, that can happen. I will tell you, it can't be forced. It can't be chased. But I'm also down to, pick up an acoustic guitar and just write a nice, really well-crafted song, and then allow the muse to come in and guide me to, like, well, where do we want to go with this? How do we want to present this? If we even want to present it. You know what I mean? But, so.
I'm not speechless often, but you have me. Okay.
The way
So
you just
if I
smacked your
triggered-
lips, man, you sounded like the dude from The Big Lebowski. Yeah, it was no, not the dude. No, it was a Jeff Bridges type feeling. I don't know, the way you took your drink, and I don't know, there was a moment. I love Jeff Bridges. Anyway, go ahead. I digress.
Okay. So we do have part 2 of the concept coming out. Is that still due out in a couple months or
No,
September?
I'm thinking it's gonna be the fall. I don't know quite yet. So what happened was there were 5 songs in particular. 2 of these 5 songs, arguably, really could have been part of part 2. But it just gets to a point where it's like, when you've been through what I've been through and where I sit in my life, I don't owe anybody anything. I've been involved with record labels before. I've chased the dream, if you will, to the point where it nearly killed me. So, like, I just don't really, it doesn't matter. If I decide to change trajectory, I change trajectory. And the thing is that we can invite people into that process. I'm very open, like with all of the followers I have on Bandcamp. I tell them what's going on, and they respond back, and they love it. They're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. So what I'm doing is the 5 songs that I don't feel really are doing the concept justice. They're still really kick-ass songs. They are going to be released on August 25th. Almost a year to the date of part 1.
Okay.
They are going to be released as a 5-song EP called History Eats Itself.
Right. So is it part of the same universe? It's just a different story?
Part of
I'm really trying to wrap my head around what you're doing.
Again, like Post-Apocalyptic Doomed Love Affair, it is its own individual separate release. Oh, but you did. You're good. See, you're starting to see how I think. No, you're right though. Now let me check this out. Yes, on history, I'm like a kid with this.
I know.
Like
So
with
much.
History Eats Itself, there's a track called Cryptoid Ammonoid, and there's the track Tectonic Boogie, Tales of the Grief Eater. I don't have the title planned out yet. But
No, stick with
it's
that.
something
Don't
like
change
that.
that.
But here's the point: the Grief Eater and Cryptoid Ammonoid are actually characters that I Nomad comes upon during his journey. So they are going to be. These are like Easter eggs for no one that gives a shit. That's awesome. No, there are. I got a few that'll give a shit.
No, this will be when they have the Clean and Sober Stoner Trivial Pursuit edition. This will be part of it.
Grief Eater and Cryptoid will show up again, and they will show up in part 2, but they will be showing up as lyrical parts of the narrative, not. The song Cryptoid Ammonoid is on History Eats Itself and is a separate thing. It has to be because it's too songy.
Now you're making
songy.
Are you familiar with the band Hawken?
Hawken?
The progressive metal.
Hawken. Hawken. Yes, I am. Yes.
I always, if it's continental, I go, yeah, they did the same thing, right? With the Cockroach King, they had a character on one album, and then it.
Chat Pile is one of my current favorite bands. They're gonna bring the Grimace guy back. That song, I don't know if you know those. Oh my god, that's a whole. I don't.
And I feel like we could do another session on different bands.
Go ahead.
But what? There's one album that is, as I'm listening to, For Whom the Last Light Descends, for whatever reason, I kept going back to Genesis and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
Wow.
That there's no way to figure out what the hell is going on with Rail. What are the colony of Slippermen? You know, you have all these things, but then when you back up from it, it actually is telling a very old story. And is this similar to what you were doing?
Absolutely.
Oh,
that marked me for life. I forgot to mention that. I mean, it's like, that is so like these pinnacle turning points, you know, when you're a strapping young lad, listening to music for the first time. It's like, it gets so weaved into your DNA that you don't even you forget. It's a part of you. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. That's really cool. That's fun. Ooh. I like that.
Because it does, except it's somewhat darker. Yeah. And you don't have any Steve Hackett interludes of absolute beauty. The last 20 seconds when I want 2 hours.
No, and I'm going to real quick chime in on that. God bless it, all of it. All the notes, all the scales, all the chords, all the moods and personalities, and the myriads of ways that we can create music. I personally, though, one of my biggest pet peeves in the heavy, the heavy genres, you know, I get really kind of tired of all of it, but there's all the subgenres, whatever. One of my biggest pet peeves is when a band presents with intensity, commitment, you know, the heavy, dark, and compelling, and they really get you right away, and they pull you in, and then all of a sudden they do a detour into some kind of happy-sounding, chorusy kind of thing. I can't stand that. I cannot stand it. Really? I feel like it's an apology to me.
Black Sabbath. Wait a minute, Black Sabbath's Master of Reality. You have Orchid that goes straight. Lord, it's this beautiful change. You get the breeze, and then all of a sudden, then you hear the.
But that's so clever though, the way they do it. I guess I'm speaking more to like when you can tell that it was sort of like that classic like cliche generic decision to like, you know, like. We can't scare them too much, kids. I mean, I've had this problem with other projects I've been in with guys that I still talk to and absolutely love and adore. But, you know, I'm telling the truth, like they were too afraid. Like every time we would get to this place And they'd be looking at me, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" And they're like, "I don't know. Like, what do we do?" And I'm like, "Dude, what we're doing is we're challenging ourselves. We're uncomfortable." Brian Eno told David Bowie when he first worked with him, David Bowie was really uncomfortable. He could read it on his face. And Brian Eno was like, "What's wrong?" And David's like, "I don't know if I like what we're doing. I don't understand it. I'm confused. I feel lost." And Brian Eno said, "That's exactly where you need to be. That's exactly where you need to be. Unless you want to keep on pulling from default moves and recycling and retreading the same thing over and over and over again, it's like, do you really want to go for it or not? And if you don't, that's totally cool. There's value in that. But for me, this project is an opportunity to like completely just no more apologies. Don't be scared. Don't question it. I'm not going to follow up like an intro to the song Invitation or whatever with like some, and I'm trying to get to the highest, what a mountain. Or, that was kind of cheesy, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
it was, but I do know what you're saying.
Very 70s.
It was almost Tom Jones, man. You like channeled in this Welsh dude with like foil stuck down.
I got a lot of characters that hide out.
Okay, I had like 3 or more brilliant questions, and I've lost track of them. Okay, now I have one. So, as today was Beware of God's Day, which, by the way, was a blessing. It was a very challenging day for me, wrapping around. But now that I understand, the reason I'm confused is I didn't read the fine print, and that this is not part 2 of this, because I'm trying to... a lot of references came to Deftones.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'll be honest, I heard about 2 seconds of Deftones, and then it occurred to me, it's like, what's his name? Chili Moreno?
Chino.
Chino. Okay, I'll edit that one out. I'm not.
Don't edit it.
I used to live in Sacramento, and I didn't care about Deftones. They had 1 or 2 songs, but it's like all of a sudden he's writing music for Yob, where because Deftones does have a certain melodic sensibility underneath the brutality. And I heard a little bit of it, but how did you feel about that? Did you see those comparisons to Deftones?
Yeah, I saw them. I mean, and I heard them as well. When I mean hearing them, I heard on one, I don't even remember, at 9 Hertz podcast, maybe it was, they were referencing Deftones. I dig Deftones. I mean, and I've had a kind of a love-hate relationship with them in terms of my own, like, I'll love an album and then they'll do another one and I can't stand it and I can't listen to it. And then I come back to it and then I end up falling in love with it, which I think is a testament to their artistry. I think that's part of what happens. So I guess what I would say is I have a very deep appreciation for Chino and Deftones. I think there's really only one track on part 1 where you might think that you're hearing some of that, and that's House of Locusts. But okay. You could reference Spotlights to that song. You could reference Quicksand to that song. You could reference Failure, ironically, the drummer's playing on it. But, you could do that, and that's what people do. And that's where it gets all subjective, and I just completely let people have whatever, obviously they're going to think or feel about it. I mean, I had people referencing High on Fire, and
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that I dig that. I get that. Clearly, that makes sense. Neurosis makes sense to me. That's an honor. That's like that's a compliment. I mean, I didn't say that, and I don't think I was trying to channel anything. But those are like masters of what they do. They're masters.
Okay. I always hate to do this. I actually am out of time.
Okay.
I have another obligation.
Yeah, good. You have a life. Woohoo!
Would you be willing to do a part 2 A lot more centered around
Yeah.
recovery and the cathartic process of
Oh
metal.
gosh, yes, I'd be honored. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would love to do that with you. I had no idea what to expect
Okay.
tonight. I didn't know how you'd react to the, it's like going to the Chestburster scene without the foreplay.
I
think
love
it's a
it.
great
No,
line, but,
I appreciate you very much. Actually, it's been a great experience.
If I let you go without this other
Mhm.
question, then okay, screw it. They can wait for me for
Okay.
5 minutes. Did I see when I was doing research something about a horror movie, a low budget horror movie that you're attached to?
I'm not attached to
or-
it. No, not a low budget horror movie. I'm actually doing another project with my producer that is a kind of a dark wave slash like ambient project called Low Budget Horror Film, and it's based on low budget horror films. So no truth in advertising.
Are you familiar with a website called Missouri Hymns?
No.
Oh, you need to. I'll
Thank you.
send you the. It's my favorite YouTube channel all time. I give her a shout out whenever I can. An example of the work she does is she found black metal albums that had a rating of 0, and then listened to them and gave her own rating and whether they deserved a 0
Nice.
or not.
I like that.
And then she gets daring, and like she just did a whole brilliant narrative on the movie Gummo by.
Oh, I
Harmony
just
Korine.
made my own Gummo T-shirt last month.
Okay, Misery Hymns. I'll send it to you. Just do
Yeah.
me a favor. When you like and subscribe, tell her the Clean and Sober Stoner
Okay, I will
sent you.
for sure.
And are you subscribed to my channel?
Yes.
On YouTube? Okay. And, well, that means your whole band is.
Like,
so-
subscribe, share, ding the bell, all that. You got to do it.
I have to start interviewing 7-piece, 10-piece bands so that I can get the sub
Yeah.
count up. Archetype, this has been more fun than I ever could have
too.
asked for. You were a total blast from start to
Awesome.
finish.
Thank you.
I'd like to do the recovery thing maybe a week
That
from
sounds
tonight.
great. I can do that for you for sure.
Okay, I'll send you the information. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to get off your chest?
Oh, no. The only other thing I'd want to give a shout out to is credit to my buddy Tom Law. He actually came up with the name Beware of Gods. It was a song that he wrote for a project called Rex Cortez, and it was a reference to when Cortez, when they came to Mexico, they'd never seen ships before, so they didn't see them. And then when they finally saw him, it was as if they were appearing out of thin air, so they thought they were gods. Hence, beware of gods. Hence, beware of where you place your intention, your thought, what you're focusing on. Beware of the gods of your mind. Beware of any gods, really, that present to you as a god. Just be aware. That's all. Choose wisely. That's the message behind that.
And if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him.
Well, or offer him a piece of pork. Anyway, all right.
Brother,
Have a
I'll
great
be
night.
in touch. So next week, same
Yep.
bat channel,
You
same
got
bat
it.
channel.
All right.
Much
You
love,
too.
man.
Thank you so much. Good night.